Hello, my name is David Atter. I'm a teacher at Hills Road Sixth Form College. I teach classical civilization, and this presentation is just to talk you through what classical civilization involves at our college. I will tell you about the topics that we study, and just give you some idea about how we approach the teaching of this subject. I'm not the sole teacher. We also have Natasha Kosanovic, who's also a teacher of Latin, not talking about that here, but just classical civilization. So hopefully you enjoy the presentation. In year one, you will study on one side of the course, the world of the hero, and the text we're studying for that is Homer's Iliad. And alongside that, you will be studying a Roman topic, the politics of the late Roman Republic, under that heading of beliefs and ideas. And you'll be looking at these enormously important figures such as Cicero, Caesar, Cato, Pompey, studying Cicero's letters, exploring the extraordinary events that led to the fall of the Roman Republic. With regard to Homer's Iliad, it's a long epic poem. You are given set books to study particularly, and you will be asked to also understand the context in which Homer writes his poem, as well as obviously exploring a lot of the mythological background to that poem. Going on to year two, the focus then on the Greek side of the course is on Greek theatre, and you'll study three plays: Oedipus the King by Sophocles, the Bacchae by Euripides, and a comedy, Frogs by Aristophanes. And alongside that, you'll also study visual and material sources. So, for example, looking at the nature of the theatre through archaeological evidence, and looking at vase imagery to help us understand better what's actually going on in the plays and how people received it and represented it amongst the audience, and disseminated and circulated it around the culture. So we will also be following on from on the Roman side of the course. We will be following on Homer's Iliad by looking at Virgil's Roman poem, the Aeneid, which takes a figure from the Iliad, Aeneas, and looks at the poem, but narrates his voyages across the Mediterranean into North Africa, and then finally arriving in Italy to initiate what later on becomes the Roman world. And it's written round about the same time as the period you'd be studying in year one, under Emperor Augustus. So there's a beautiful fit between those two topics. So there's a clear division between the Greek and the Roman side of the course. So just to summarise, in year one, Homer's epic poem, the Iliad, which deals with episodes from the Trojan Wars. And then on the Roman side, the fall of the Roman Republic, and then in year two, Greek theatre, and then alongside that, Virgil's Aeneid. So just to say a little bit more about the world of the hero, I already made a few sort of comments about what this poem is about. In the sort of figure there, you can see a vase, a black figure vase with the figure of Achilles, the hero of the poem. The poem is really about what happens to the Greek attempt to take Troy, to punish the Trojans for the abduction of Helen of Troy. And what happens when Achilles refuses to fight? He falls out with the leading general, Agamemnon, and for much of the poem, the Greeks are on the back foot and think they may well be defeated, because Achilles says, "I will not serve under that man." You will find out in book one, when we study it, why there's this terrible falling out between the general of the Greek forces, Agamemnon, and the supreme warrior who is semi-divine. And then how they manage to get Achilles back into the battlefield. What happens that draws him back in? The whole poem is really about the anger of Achilles, and he does come back onto the battlefield, so I'm not going to give you any plot spoilers in terms of how the poem then kind of concludes from that. Yeah, so that is the component of the Iliad, and as I said already, it's underpinned by mythological representations of the Greek gods, so you'll learn a lot about that. I know many of you will already come interested in that topic with significant sort of knowledge, but Homer is probably the preeminently the most valuable and important source for understanding of Greek myths and legends about the gods. So you'll be encountering gods such as Zeus, Hera, Aphrodite, and Ares, the god of war, Hephaestus, and so forth, and numerous other kind of divine and semi-divine figures, including Thetis, Achilles' mother. Okay, so moving on from that, on the Greek side of the course, in the second year of the course, we focused on 3 plays, 2 tragic plays, one by Sophocles, probably the most famous Greek tragedy ever written, Oedipus the King. Those of us that teach it and study it, many of us believe it's the most perfect dramatic plot ever constructed. It's a drama about origins and finding out about who you really are. It's, as so often with Greek tragedy, it's about the consequences of your actions and how things you've done in the past will come back and have to be accounted for in the present. Euripides' Bacchae is one of the last of the great tragedies to be written, and it revolves around the cult of Dionysus. Yeah? The Bacchantes are the figures who worship Dionysus, and it's about what happens to a king of Thebes, Pentheus, who denies the divinity of Dionysus. And therefore also it explores, as does Oedipus the King, punishments that befall human beings who make errors of judgment or through their own arrogance, what the Greeks called hubris, lead to either acts of sort of folly or a denial of or rejection or transgression against the gods. And the terrible punishment that follows on from that. Then lastly, we'll study the wonderful comic play Frogs by Aristophanes, which is set really close to the end of the Peloponnesian Wars between the Athenians and the Greeks. And it also involves a journey to the underworld. It's very, very funny. It's got a kind of crazy, almost Monty Python-esque kind of comic quality to it. But at the sort of core of the play is a representation of 2 tragic dramatists, Aeschylus and Euripides, and a kind of X Factor-like competition about who is the best of the dramatists, who is best placed to guide Athens forward at its moment of crisis. So even though the play is very, very funny and comic, it also addresses very serious concerns, certainly for those people in the audience, probably very nervous, if not frightened, about the consequences of an Athenian defeat, which in fact did take place shortly after the play was first produced. So these plays are among the foundations of Western drama. So any of you that study either theatre studies or English literature or English language and literature will get great benefit from also studying original Greek theatre, obviously in translation. So moving on, I've already mentioned a few elements of Greek tragedy that you're probably already familiar with. The idea of dramatic irony. Those of you that are studying An Inspector Calls or A View from the Bridge by Arthur Miller will know that, or Shakespeare plays like Macbeth, that the audience knows things that the characters don't. and that creates this idea of us knowing more than them, and therefore the kind of dramatic irony that is produced as a result of that. Many of the Greek plays, certainly Oedipus, the king, deals with ideas about fate and can you avoid your fate? Can you hide away or run away from it? And then this idea about hubris, the idea of arrogance or pride, which leads you to some fatal transgression. So these plays, these works bequeath to us all sorts of important concepts and ideas that are still relevant to our own society. We only need to think about observing contemporary life, this connection between arrogance and then its downfall is a very sort of close companion to Greek ideas of hubris and nemesis, what results from hubris, the punishments, the downfall, the humiliation that comes from your own arrogant belief in your own powers, your own sort of superiority. Again, I've sort of outlined much of what is involved in Oedipus the King. Again, play written about 2,500 years ago in the golden age of the Greek Enlightenment. As I said, it's already been named as written by Sophocles, one of the most important of all of the ancient Greek tragic dramatists. And it touches upon all sorts of fears and experiences that are still very, very relevant today. The play actually begins in a pandemic, certainly a plague afflicting the city of Thebes, and explores how one individual, Oedipus, is asked to try and provide a solution to that terrible crisis. And has any of you who go on to study psychology or English literature and come across concepts such as the Oedipus concept will know where that ultimately derives, but also its influence upon the way in which plays are written. I've already mentioned J.B. Priestley's An Inspector Calls, and we could go on and sort of talk about Arthur Miller, unparalleled influence on Western literature. So the other first year topic is politics of the late Roman Republic, and you see some of the kind of leading figures there. Figure that became sort of Emperor Augustus and Julius Caesar and Cicero, and this great struggle for supremacy in Rome, which ultimately leads to the establishment of the Roman Empire and the rise of Emperor Augustus. It's in those circumstances that Virgil writes his great epic poem. So in the past, more favourable times, we've been able to take students on trips to Rome. So you can see students there enjoying that, and obviously we're very much looking forward to reviving that opportunity to go on further trips as soon as we're able to safely. The other aspect of our department is we're very active in terms of inviting guest speakers, and we're very well placed, obviously, being a Cambridge college, to be able to draw upon world experts in their field. Those are just a number of them. Any of you that ever watch documentaries on television about classics, or listen to radio programs such as In Our Time, will encounter those named figures. In fact, as I'm recording this today, we're going to have a lecture by Professor Paul Cartledge. You can see that in the sort of picture. There's me across on the left. You can probably just about guess who I am there, from a couple of years ago. And now we're in a position to be able to revive that very strong tradition of our department. We've attended all sorts of events. There's a sort of hugely sort of active culture of promoting the classics in all sorts of ways. Not just the serious sort of academic lectures, which are very important, but also things like performances, and all sorts of fun activities as well. And you can see one example of that from November 29, with a kind of a performance based around Virgil's Aeneid, involving music as well. We're members of the Classical Association, and you can sort of see some of our students alongside some of the faculty members of the Departments of Classics, including Professor Mary Bidd, who is a nationally important, culturally important figure, as I'm sure you will know, so a great supporter to our own department. So wonderful opportunities to be able to engage with classics at the highest level. We try and offer enrichment in learning ancient Greek for students who've never had that opportunity. Again, just an optional sort of extra that students become involved in. You will learn lots of phrases or words of Latin and Greek, which are very useful to know. But also, hopefully those students that take up this opportunity, will embark on the beginning of being able to make sense of ancient Greek. To be able to read it and to be able to hear it spoken and to be able to understand something of its vocabulary and structures. Certainly anybody who's serious about later on learning ancient Greek perhaps as part of a degree program, it's a great kind of beginning to get you going on that pathway, and great fun as well. So just thinking about the sort of business end of the course, the examinations, again, it reflects what I've been talking about in terms of the overall sort of structure of the course. The World of the Hero combines both the Homer and the Virgil topics from the first year and the second year, in terms of a 2 hour and 20 minutes long sort of paper, with kind of shorter form questions and longer form questions, and then an opportunity to compare the ancient Greek epic from about the 8th century BC and Virgil's much later Roman epic. And component 2 focuses on Greek theatre and the visual arts, where you'll get an opportunity to write about at least 2 of the plays that you study, but also notice and visual arts. That use of vases, there were prescribed visual images relating to vases which depict scenes from the plays, from the productions that were produced round about the same time that the plays were being performed. And of course the archaeological evidence of the theatres is also sort of integrated within that paper. So you may well be looking at visual sources reproduced on the exam paper and asked to relate it to your understanding of the text of the drama. And lastly, politics of the late Roman Republic. Again, as I've been saying previously, that focuses upon a sort of historical sort of understanding of that epochal period of not just Roman or European, but also world history. It really is a pivotal sort of turning point in European and global history, but also looking at some of the source materials, particularly the letters of Cicero, that take us right back into the very kind of almost sort of daily experience of what's happening now with these great figures that surface later on in Shakespeare plays, for example. So you'll be hearing about people like sort of Mark Antony, Marcus Brutus, Julius Caesar, and then thinking about the rise of Octavian becoming the Augustus, the Emperor Augustus, and other extraordinary figures like Antony and Cleopatra. We're very proud of the performance that our students have displayed over the years, consistently performing significantly above national sort of averages. So A star to B is a kind of higher grade frame, and you can see there 80% of our students, which is an astonishing sort of figure, are among the those higher grades. But we also are proud of the fact that all of our students over the last few years have passed, and most of them passing at the higher level. But the track record is that students who engage positively with this course will pass the course at whatever grade level they're able to do, depending on their ability and level of work. But this also is reflected in the range of student destinations. Clearly, many of our students are come in enthused and are even more enthused by the subject afterwards, and go on and study classical civilization, where you don't need to have studied Latin or Greek previously. You will get the opportunity to do so. There are various configurations of that classical studies, classical archaeology, and then of course literature and history degrees, for which classics is an ideal basis. But also students will be going to any number of different kinds of degrees. So, for example, sort of fashion might be just one of many that a good A level in classics will support and provide a lifelong source of enrichment and cultural knowledge about very important and still relevant cultural topics. The classics are still very much with us, and perhaps increasingly so, and are a great way of being able to think about our world, the contemporary world, with, and the debates that surround that. It's everywhere. It's still very much with us. So we look forward to seeing you in our classrooms and engaging with some of those issues. So thank you very much for listening, and I wish you all the best. And we look forward to seeing you in our classrooms. Thank you very much.